Здравствуйте, в эфире программа «Время».
Hello, in this broadcast, the program Time with an overview of the most significant events of the day. In the Kremlin, the Pan-Russian Conference was held on problems of local self-rule and the organization of state power in the Russian Federation. The conference, evidently, is most important and very complicated. The center can no longer run the regions as previously. At the same time, it's imperative to preserve the wholeness of Russia. Please note the figures which were cited by the Vice Premier Shakrai. As of today, 67 regions of the country are subsidized, and only 22 of them are profitable. Now the report. State rule, national rule, here are the two concepts which were debated in the Marble Hall in the Kremlin. What concerns the setup of the higher echelons of power of the country, there is clarity in this area, but Moscow is not all of Russia. Meanwhile, in the cities and districts, instead of the liquidated Soviets or councils and their executive organs, there is no unified structure of power. And the immense state ship which is called Russia, without a unified team of administrators, can lose navigability. Opening the conference, the President Boris Yeltsin stated that without a survivable system of local self-rule, there can be no reliance on the effectiveness of institutions of state power. Therefore, in the heads of state's opinion, it's imperative today to revive the tradition of local self-rule. If in issues of economic reforms we can say the basic landmarks have been defined, the question of how to structure Russia will still have to be resolved. An abyss has been created between the government and the people. I'll remind you that when in 1917 the abyss was only between the rule and society, even then Russia collapsed. But the abyss between the government and the people cannot be endured or reconciled with. We must fill this abyss and creatively plant in it national self-rule. This is why this problem for us is so unavoidable and surpasses all other problems. Viktor Chernomyrdin noted that already in questions of the federal budget for the current year, the government bases itself on principles of the independence of budgets at all levels of power. The analysis of the signed documents and those being prepared indicates that through dialogue, certain subjects of the Federation are attempting at times to reserve their power hold on objects of the exclusive realm or jurisdiction of the Russian Federation, to receive one-sided discounts, benefits, advantages to the detriment of others, and establish for themselves a special status not foreseen by the constitution of our country. The speeches of the President and Premier describing the draft law on local self-rule evoked diverse reaction at the conference. The idea itself of reviving the old district land administration systems impresses everyone. However, the expanded draft law received significant commentary. After all, we have today a certain administrative territorial system, and for the transitional period, we must form organs of local self-rules in these nuclei, in these structures, and this should be defined by the federal law, because on locations, these principles may be interpreted otherwise. Today, they examined a question which is vital for Russia, which for decades will define the future of the country. And when the political life has not settled itself, there's a great danger of replacing organs of local self-rule as organs of self-organization and decision in domestic, industrial, local questions with a political struggle and political structures. And from this point of view, the law on local self-rule, which is being examined, of course, elicits much reprimand. Some who spoke, and I was disturbed by this, I'll say mildly, tried very hard to ignite the topic of connecting the organization of self-rule with the national structure of the Russian Federation. We can't approach this problem like a bull in a china shop by inciting its national meaning, because it's also a rational sense. And here there is a lack of knowledge on the part of the respected Alexander Isaievich of history of Russia and today's situation. One must have a feel for this rational theme. We represent almost all of Russia, the Tersk Cossack Army and the Central Cossack Army and the Volga Cossack Army. I think that self-rule is not a contemporary notion, but came from historical times. Local self-rule applies to the Cossacks, and so it is. But how it progresses, that's something we'll have to see. The State Duma today declined the proposal to hold a joint session of both chambers of parliament to discuss the address of the President of Russia. For this proposal, which was made by a member of the faction, the Communist Nikolai Bintyukov, 134 deputies voted, and with 3 against. The necessary quorum to adopt a positive decision is 226 votes. Bintyukov justified his proposal by the fact that the address of the President, in his opinion, does not match the draft federal budget for the current year. The presidential aides today commented on the address of the President. Participants of the press conference in Moscow drew the attention of the journalists to several important aspects in the address of the President of Russia to the Federal Assembly. Overall, the address, Vyacheslav Kostikov noted, was sustained in the spirit and style of political centrism. At the same time, one can't ignore that the political economic strategies embedded in the address, without any doubt, are a good basis for the closest possible interaction of the President with the Democrats. I would say that in an indirect way, the hand of the President has been stretched out. It was also noted that the President attempted to remove fears regarding the threat to democracy because of events in Chechnya. They became a type of test for Russian democracy. The social alarm of rights advocates we will certainly hear. The bitter and sharp words of caution of Sergei Adamovich Kovalov toward the President have, as I may express myself, extended themselves into the address of the President in the form of most important statements regarding human rights in the Russian society. Responding to the question on the personal responsibility in resolving the crisis, Georgy Satarov noted, in a democratic country, from the point of view of the functioning of the government, norms are more important than people. Alexander Lifshitz recognized the minor's problem to be very complex, noting that it's under the control of the President's apparatus. I'm very confident that by the 1st of March it will be resolved and resolved positively. If these are true dialogues, there will be a convergence from both sides. The President in his message said that it was possible to preserve accord in society, and that has been managed, but among politicians it is waning in connection again with what's occurring among the parliamentarians of Russia today. The majority of time the deputies devoted to discussing a question about the work of the chairman of the Committee on Organizing the Duma's Procedures, Vladimir Bauer. As a result, the discussion boiled down to examining the apartment issue by the parliamentarians and ricocheted and hit Russia's choice, which had suggested removal of Bauer as chairman of the committee. Deputies supported Bauer and didn't dismiss him, but the Russia's choice faction was in hot water at the session. The faction, in essence, was not prepared for such a turn of events. Yegor Gaidar was not in the auditorium at the time. I submit a proposal to investigate this commission in its economic political activities. As it became clear, other Russia's choice members received apartments, and the letter which conveyed the official apartment to Bauer was signed by Gaidar himself. After the heated debates, Ivan Rybkin instructed information be distributed in the Duma describing the type of each deputy's apartment. It became evident that for Russia's choice, financial problems could emerge. The president of the company will be Oleg Boyko, simultaneously chairman of the party headquarters, decided to resign from that post. His position doesn't conform with the position of the political council. Boyko has a different attitude toward this, but the fact that he feels that he's having difficulty being in such a high-ranking post as the chairman of the headquarters of the party, and at the same time not share the position of the chairman of the party, Yegor Gaidar, and the political council of the party, I think there is even a certain dignified stance here to a point, and an honest one. Today, Boris Fyodorov announced the creation on the basis of the union of the 12th of December of a new political movement which will actively be involved in the future parliamentary elections. Members of the Commission investigating Chechen events held a press conference. As Stanislav Govorukhin said, unobjective information is released from both sides, the Russian and Chechen. Deputies were in Chechnya and saw things firsthand themselves. I don't believe that this will end peacefully, because there are no objective preconditions for this. The Chechen topic, as previously, is in the center of attention. Military representatives of Russia and Chechen formations agreed today to extend the ceasefire until 1800 hours on the 19th of February. The exchange of prisoners of war, the dead and injured, will occur midday, the 18th of February. This is the result of the third round of talks held today. But whether or not shots were heard in Chechnya, a correspondent of Russian agencies did not report on that today. After a relatively calm evening with isolated killed shooting in the suburb of Grozny. Today, the commander of the federal forces in Chechnya, General Kulikov, and the head of the Dudaev staff, Aslan Maskhadov, agreed at the meeting in the Cossack village Ordzhonikidze to extend ceasefire till 1800 hours the 19th of February, expedite exchange of prisoners of war, and to give to the Chechen side bodies of the gunmen killed in Grozny. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we are permitting them to take away the bodies of their casualties from the city. The rest of the questions previously negotiated in the form of proposals to resolve this problem, they continue to discuss them. On Sunday, they will inform us. But we are no longer planning concrete time limits to continue the talks. According to the presidential advisor in Ingushetia, Pyotr Kosov, talks were held in a benevolent atmosphere, and Dudaev's field commanders left Ordzhonikidze with the hope that an extension of the truce would help politicians to resolve the Chechen problem. Hence, after today's agreements, the forces and residents who hadn't yet abandoned Grozny received one more breathing space, and the Ministry of Emergency Situations possibly an opportunity for evacuation of refugees and delivery of humanitarian aid. Meanwhile, despite the temporary lull, there's the more than enormous concern for units of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. From sources surrounding Ruslan Hasbulatov, ITER-TASS learned that in Grozny, the older brother of Jahar Dudaev was detained, the shadow advisor of the Chechen leader, Beg Surma Dudaev. However, later the agency reported that neither in the Ministry of Internal Affairs nor the FSK was this information confirmed. Meanwhile, Russian officials have turned to Interpol for assistance in the search and capture of Jahar Dudaev in the event that he's outside of Russia. The acting Prosecutor General of Russia underlined that such a step is one of the warning measures. It would be better to arrest Dudaev in Chechnya, but this mission, he says, is quite complicated. In Chechnya, organs of law and order are being restored. The Ministry of the Internal Affairs of the Republic is being reborn. The formation of the Internal Affairs Department in Znamensky is almost complete, the administrative center of the Natsevich region. More than 70 employees have been certified and are employed. There's a shortage of criminal search specialists, investigators. Aid is provided by experienced operations officials who came to Znamensky from many regions of Russia. The regional office was headed by the sub-colonel of the militia, Ahmed El-Murzaev, who began as the head of a smaller department in 1976. His staff are thwarting all attempts at insurgents in the territory by Dudaev backers. The effectiveness of the local militia is not great yet, but an attempt is being made to bring order into the regiment. But what is important, and Musaev said, people trust us more, and already every day there is an increase of people coming to the on-duty department with complaints or statements. Not one case is left without a reaction. The statistics of refugees is growing since the beginning of conflict in Chechnya, the 12th of December 1994. The conflict region has been abandoned by 226,000 officially registered displaced persons. 100,000 of them, according to the services, did not officially register and are living with relatives. On the administrative border of Chechnya and Dagestan, the Gerzet's control inspection point is sealed off. This stretch of the road, Rostov-Baku, for more than 2 months, has literally remained the main road for refugees. To the other side of the border, to the close-by Khasavyurt, the Khasavyurt district, and other northern parts of Dagestan, more than 50,000 people have passed through. And today, there is a strict restriction on traffic, not only vehicular traffic, but on foot. Such extreme measures are connected with the departure of Chechen gunmen from Grozny to the southern mountainous areas, and to close off the most dangerous stretches of the mountainous roads and passes, fortified barricades have been set up. And about one more conflict. Today, a document was distributed in which the presidents of Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan appealed to the UN Security Council to institute a full-fledged peacekeeping operation in Tajikistan. In these cold, wintry February days in the mountains on the state border between Tajikistan and Afghanistan, relative tranquility has settled in. Only rarely the border guards are disturbed by small groups of smugglers. The believers in Tajikistan, as in other countries of the East, are keeping their fast. The leader of the Tajik opposition, Hajar Barturajan Zoda, declared a moratorium on combat operations for the period of the holy month Ramazan. Hence, the ceasefire agreement, which was achieved in Islamabad, will be extended until the 6th of March. 2 days earlier, the president of Tajikistan, Emomali Rahmonov, in a letter to the UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali, confirmed the official position and principal position of his republic and readiness of the government to extend the ceasefire on the territory of Tajikistan for any term without any additional conditions. Meanwhile, the future command of the Russian border troops in Tajikistan doesn't exclude the possibility of tension on the Tajik-Afghan border this spring. On the territory of Afghanistan, everyone is tired of war, and now a new force is emerged, which will probably have to be counted with. These are the students of the secondary, post-secondary spiritual academies who united in a movement called Taliban. It is a generation of Afghans who during their lives saw no peace at all. They have achieved much. After crushing the Mujahids of Hikmatyar, they entered Kabul to disarm all the gangs and arsenals. In essence, they entered contiguity with the armed forces of the president. Currently in the Afghan capital, attempts are made to prevent major bloodshed, and pressure is applied on Rabbani for him to transfer his power to the interim council. We can only speculate, where did the Talib movement get such a high level of preparation? Despite their religiousness, evidently they're not motivated by the Quran. Probably many learned the science of war in refugee camps in Pakistan, where they spent their childhood. One other thing is unclear: who's behind the Talibs, because at their disposal is more than 200 units of combat technology and even 12 airplanes. And yet the aim of the Talibs is well known. They are for the end of the fratricidal war, which already took thousands of lives, and to create a unified Muslim administration. The young servants of Allah intend to fight with everyone who resists this. And this explains the fact that the student movement among the war-fatigued Afghan population has received broad support. And this illustrates the disenchantment of regular Afghans over everything occurring and their sincere striving for peace. And now about the defense from air of the outer borders of the CIS. Our correspondent Vladimir Polozhentsov spoke with the commander of the units of anti-air defense. In this central control room of the military department of the air defense system, there have been no press conferences. From here, the commander commands training and with the on-duty officers observes the air situation of the country. After the summit of the CIS in Almaty, where it was decided to create a unified air defense system in the CIS, from here, the sky over virtually all the territory of the former USSR is controlled. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, each independent state received a portion of the military means of the air defense division, but in the last years in many countries, technology has come into disrepair. Qualification of service personnel has declined rapidly. Because of low salaries, officers are leaving the army. If matters continued like this, in a few years, the possibility to control the airspace over these countries would be zero. Therefore, on the initiative of the Ministry of Defense of Russia in 1994, the heads of the air defense of the country developed documents which are part of the base of the agreement to create a unified air defense system. This was said at a press conference today. Efforts of one country are insufficient today to control their own borders. For several decades, there are united air defense systems operated by countries of NATO and North America. With each individual CIS country, Russia separately formed an agreement which provided for allocations from their budgets of funds to support the unified CIS forces. In Almaty, the decision was ratified to create a coordination committee of air defense system of the CIS. The head commander appointed is the Colonel General Prudnikov. To the question, how combat efficient is the anti-air defense system of Russia today, he said, the forces of the anti-air defense system today are combat capable and are capable of fulfilling their missions using those contingents which we have and are maintaining today. We're speaking of common borders, but today the largest Ukrainian Republican Party began to collect signatures to hold a referendum on secession from the CIS. Two Ukrainian regions, the western and eastern, again demonstrated different views of their political future. In Kyrgyzia, today they report that the second round of parliamentary elections, which is scheduled for the 19th of February, will probably not be held. Meanwhile, as our correspondent reports, to the thunder of political battles at Canal, the economy continues to crumble. 35% of all companies were at a standstill all month. The rest were operating at between 20 to maximum 50% of their capacity. The plant which you see right now is virtually unique. It is truly operating at full force. The Confederation of Labor Unions of Azerbaijan announced that a social explosion was inevitable in the republic if indexation of the minimum salary was not done. Today in Baku, the union appeal to the president was publicized. The president of Turkmenia has seized 75% of the profits from commercial banks for the budget. Despite such methods, the economic situation in Turkmenia is one of the most stable. And in Russia, the ruble today fell by another 21 points, and for $1 American, they give 4,314 rubles. Today, at the expanded panel of the State Committee of Property, Anatoly Chubais, with full responsibility, promised inflation will be decreased monthly from now on and will eventually achieve the level of 1.5% to 2%. He feels that if not, the manufacturing sphere of the Russian economy will be placed on the verge of survival. It's clear that investors, especially foreign ones, won't put money into companies which don't own their own land. Therefore, Anatoly Chubais stated that the land must be sold to privatized companies. According to him, this year, the priority for the State Committee of Property is not how much state properties become private, but how much money has been received from those sales. Money is in short supply for Russian health care. This question is vital for us all. Therefore, I'll draw your attention to the press conferences which were held in Moscow. That press conference, which was held in the Ministry of Healthcare and Medical Industry, few medical journalists attended. There, the minister said that everything was well in his department. Specifically, there's enough insulin for everyone. But at the press conference, where representatives of the medical society, very esteemed ones, gathered, other words were heard, quite unpleasant ones, specifically that the deterioration of the health of the nation could become irreversible. They said that the incompetence of the ministry comes to the point where in the list of vital agents, for every 3 lines of list, there are 5 gross medical mistakes, etc. The world-famous surgeon, the academic Petrovsky, especially emphasized that the amalgamation of healthcare and the medical industry is absurd, and that the regime of a monolith uncontrollable power is the main reason for the collapse of the domestic medical system, which 7 years ago representatives of 140 countries recognized as the best in the world. Despite the woeful situation in healthcare, the medical profession sees sensations. One of them occurred 9 years ago. Today we can show you the results and the perspective. The birth of this little girl 9 years ago in our country became a sensation, a test tube baby. Today, to the Moscow Center of Obstetrics, Gynecology and Perinatology, hundreds of married couples come for help. Just recently, in the Laboratory of Clinical Embryology, a new program was developed, which jokingly is called a dad from a test tube. The paternal instinct is as steady as the maternal instinct, but unfortunately, infertility afflicts 40% of all men. Now, they can get real help here. The doctor will choose only 1 sperm without any defect, and the conception will occur through microinjection. Scientists for years were certain that to achieve anything like this was impossible. Now, in the laboratory, they've conducted not only the first tests, but developed a new unique apparatus. It's interesting that as a result of such operations, even there could be multiple births. According to the head of the laboratory, Boris Leonov, a woman makes the choice how many children she is to keep, although for some people the birth of 3 or 4 children after years of expectation possibly is true joy. But to subject yourself to such experiments is best not in dubious commercial entities, which lately are in great abundance, but in specialized centers where the doctors not only have diplomas, but years of experience. And now news from the Criminal Chronicle. Until the 11th of June, the period of detention was extended for the scandalously infamous attorney Dmitry Yakubovsky, accused of involvement in the theft of ancient manuscripts from the Russian National Library in St. Petersburg. This was the decision made by the city prosecutor. This afternoon, for a 2-day official visit, the chairman of the government, Viktor Chernomyrdin, arrived in Poland. Expected is the signing of a joint declaration by the heads of state on developing economic cooperation between the 2 countries. The visit of Viktor Chernomyrdin in circumstances of internal political instability in Poland and on the eve of the change of the cabinet of ministers emphasizes the urgency for mutual rapprochement. Among the Eastern European countries, relations between Russia and Poland are not developing to the optimum, especially in politics. The strife striving of Warsaw to enter NATO is not viewed benevolently in Moscow. We part ways in other political problems as well. But of course, politics could not but affect the economy. Previously, the trade volume turnover with Russia for Poland was 60%. Today, it has been reduced to 20%. Meanwhile, as time has shown, on the economic level, the countries cannot do without each other. The situation is simple to the point of banality. On the European market, apart from raw materials, neither Poland nor we are expected. Viktor Chernomyrdin arrived in Warsaw in the afternoon, and the sides immediately embarked on talks. First in a narrow circle and later with the delegations present. The state delegations are preparing to sign several documents, among which is the laying of a gas line, Yamal-Western Europe, cooperation in the area of medicine, a customs agreement. The prime ministers themselves will sign a joint declaration to develop economic cooperation of the two countries. In the end of the day, the Prime Minister of Russia is to meet with the President of the Polish Republic. It's turbulent on the borders between many countries, especially Peru and Ecuador. And according to certain reports, the echo of this conflict has rolled to the CIS countries. So Ukrainian nationalists from the organization UNA-UNSA, whose members are known to have participated in the Chechen conflict on Dudayev's side, stated that they support Ecuador and in its territorial dispute with Peru. Leaders of that organization have announced that their participation and aid would not only lead to the triumph of justice, but would permit the fighters to acquire valuable combat experience. Peru and Ecuador signed today an agreement on ceasefire in their armed conflict, which began from the 26th of January. The agreement provides for sending international observers into the combat zone. Both sides undertook also to withdraw their armed forces to specially designated points in order to avoid the risk of confrontation or any provocations from either side. The House of Representatives of Congress of the United States approved the draft law to strengthen national security. According to that document, from contributions of the United States into the UN budget, funds must be detained or deducted, which the U.S. spent during involvement in peace support missions. It was also decided to restrict the President's powers in engaging the Army in UN operations. Now the document will be examined by the Senate. President Clinton, however, said that in case both chambers of Congress approve this draft, he will veto it. Thousands of people honored in a moment of silence the memory of the victims of the earthquake in the city Kobe. The devastating disaster befell Japan exactly 1 month ago and took 5,378 human lives. More than 200,000 people were left homeless. The Prime Minister of Japan, Tomoichi Murayama, whose government was criticized for their tardiness in liquidating the repercussions, said that Japan must glean a lesson from this sad experience and develop a system for immediate response to such incidents. Few of our television viewers have never flown Aeroflot planes and never dreamed that flying them would be better. And now about the future of our airplane companies, and which was discussed in Vienna, information from there. In Vienna, the first international conference, air transportation in the former USSR, was held. Its essence is that in Russia there is still no law on civil aviation. The initiative to exchange experience was demonstrated by the joint stock company Aeroflot, the Russian international airline. At the forum, they noted the inconsistency of tendencies. If the world air transportation industry, in it there are processes of integration. In Russia, it's the reverse. There are already more than 400 airline companies. Many of them are attempting to receive access to foreign routes, although others. There are also airlines which have only one plane or one helicopter. As a result, it was acknowledged that Russia, just as any country, needs a main national air carrier, which guarantees, first of all, a high level of safety for flights. The adoption of an air code of Russia will unconditionally bring clarity into this issue, and the law banning unhealthy competition would reduce its intensity. For more than $3 million at the Sotheby's auction, the Tissot painting October was sold. The painting of the 19th century French painter depicts his beloved Catherine Newton. The final price 2 times exceeded the first price, but was behind the unique record set last year when another Tissot painting, also a portrait of Miss Newton, was sold for $5 million. Young talents on the stage of the Bolshoi Theater, an anniversary concert of the International Benevolent Program, The New Names. On the glorified stage of the Bolshoi Theater, the young talents of Russia are performing. For them who've already won titles of laureates in many pan-Russian and international festivals and competitions, who have performed on the most famous stages of the world, and who have extensive concertizing experience despite their youthful age, this evening is unique. The program, The New Names, the Russian Fund of Culture, celebrates the 5th anniversary and completes a festival unprecedented in scale dedicated to the 50th anniversary of victory. The most important thing is the recognition for ourselves and that we are in the Bolshoi Theater and that representing all of Russia are more than 50 delegations. That is a very happy thing, that we are recognized and we've become a national program. The program, New Names with Triumph, performed in the Congress of the United States, in the United Nations, in UNESCO, the Vatican. It's a participant of the World 10th Movement of Development of Culture, in the framework of which concerts were held in Russia. The result of the 5 years of activities, not only 400 stipend recipients, young musicians, poets, and artists. This is the idea incarnated, a dream of a sole cultural expanse. This is the President of Russia opening and presenting the Golden Book, where annually the names of young talented Russians will be recorded, which was named the 20th century to the 21st century. I feel that this is a gift of God to our people, such talent as our youth has. Music lives in Russia and will live and will set the utmost examples for the entire world for a very long time. It's time to thank you for your attention and wish you all the best, say goodbye, and give the word over to our sports commentator, Daria Chervonenko. Goodbye. Good evening. Today in Moscow, literally just now, the historical international competitions in our track and field ended. They were held in competition for the prizes of the record holders and Olympic champions in high jumping, the legend of our sport, Valery Vrumel. In our former Soviet Union, there were several Olympic champions, but in Russia, I'm the only Olympic champion left. And I never dreamed that competitions could be held during my lifetime. The winners are Natalia Golodnova and Leonid Punolanin. Ending in a tie in the 45th move was the 8th match of the semi-final game of the rivals for the World Championship in chess between Anatoly Karpov and Boris Gelfand. The score of the match is 4-3 for the world champion. The Muscovite Yelena Batalova has won the gold medal at the World Freestyle Championships held in the French winter resort area La Clusaz. The Russian looked better than the favorite Hélène Bryn from the United States in all marking categories. A third victory was held by the American Picabo Street at the World Championships in Sweden. Katya Zaitsenger was second. Unfortunately, the Russian skier Varvara Zelenskaya, who showed the best time during the training descent, didn't enter the top 10. News from the NHL. The match between the teams Philadelphia Flyers and Quebec Nordics ended with a score of 2-4. One successful pass each for Valery Kaminsky from Quebec and Dmitry Yushkevich, who plays for the Philadelphia team.
Добрый вечер.
Good evening. A broad area of lowered atmospheric pressure, which is spreading from the cyclone with the center over the Sea of Norway, tomorrow will define the weather of the North European part of Russia. On the Kola Peninsula in the Arkhangelsk district, the Republic of Komi, and the Nenetsk Autonomous District, it will bring warm, humid air. Here, variably cloudiness is expected with periods of snow. During the day, it's unseasonably warm, 0-5. On the territory of Karelia, the northwestern region, in the Baltic countries on Saturday, an atmospheric front connected with the cyclone over the Atlantic will pass through. It will be cloudy, windy, and rainy. During the day, temperatures will be from +1 to 6 degrees. In central Russia, unfortunately, as previously, it's cloudy and rainy, temperatures around 0. It will be warmer over the central Volga, Saturday -4 to 9, Sunday 0-3. Atmospheric fronts will ruin the weather in Belarus, Ukraine, and Moldova. Here, rain will pass through with some patches of wet snow. Temperatures during the day +2 to 7. In Moldova, +10 degrees. On the lower Volga, without much precipitation, 0-5. In the Rostov district, the Krasnodar area, Stavropol, Rim, Chechnya, Ingushetia, Dagestan, in the morning and evening, fog is possible during the day. Partly cloudy skies without precipitation. Temperatures during the day +4 to 9. On the Black Sea coast, as high as +12. In Rostov-on-the-Don, +1 to 3. Beyond the Caucasus, partly cloudy skies are expected without significant precipitation. In Georgia, Armenia, +1.6. Azerbaijan, +9 degrees. And about the weather in St. Petersburg and Moscow. In Petersburg on the weekend, it will be cloudy with snow mixed with rain. Temperatures during the night and day +2 to 4 degrees. Winds are variable. In the capital, it's cloudy, mostly precipitation in the form of snow at night and during the day around 0. Winds are from the south, 7 to 12 meters per second with gusts. On Sunday, the weather will not change. The forecast was compiled on the data from the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia, and I say goodbye and wish you pleasant rest. Goodbye.